You're going to be spending a lot of time with this textbook this year, guys, and my goal for this video is ultimately to help you get the most out of your textbook. A classic conversation I've had with some of my AP US history students in the past might go something like this. So guys, what's the answer to the question? You can hear the crickets respond from the class. Guys, you have your books right in front of you. Find it. Class might respond, okay, but where? If you've ever had that question, then this video is for you. Many students are already familiar with being able to unlock useful resources like the table of contents or the index to help them find any information they can about a particular event or a person or a specific law. And nearly everyone can look up a specific concept or word in the glossary. That's pretty easy to remember. Well, okay, you might ask, but why should I worry about what else is in this massive paperweight? Well, you'll be needing it for a few things in here. For one, doing our weekly chapter notes. 2, preparing for a group quiz presentation. 3, preparing for an in-class essay. 4, preparing for a class debate. 5, preparing for a group project. And 6, answering a question during a class discussion. In other words, guys, these books aren't the end-all be-all. There are a number of different resources we'll be using this year, but they are helpful tools that you need to be able to get the most out of. Before we dig any further, though, it's important to remember that history is an argument, and as such, we need to be able to identify whose argument we're ultimately receiving. You'll want to flip to this page at the beginning of your book about the authors. There you'll be able to hear about what sort of backgrounds they're from, where they grew up, where they're ultimately teaching, and ask yourself this question. Do any of these authors reflect my background? Do any of them reflect my goals or my views about history? Well, how you answer that question can help you determine how much weight you should ultimately give some of their arguments. What else can be very valuable to you is understanding the approach. It's not often that authors typically tell you what their core focus areas are going to be. Now, you already learned the specific expertise of some of those authors in the previous page, but here you get to learn about how they're going to be approaching the book, what sort of point of view they're coming from, what their points of emphasis will be. And while you may know where the table of contents are, the full table of contents, sometimes it can be real helpful to find a page to quickly find what page the beginning is. Because if I ask you to open your books, you need to be able to very quickly find that chapter here. And at the beginning, this is a good place to find that. Tomorrow, we're going to learn about the importance of different types of sources and different types of evidence. And you'll learn that primary sources are typically held in higher regard than secondary sources. While on this page of American Views, the primary source for each individual chapter throughout the text is indicated here. This is something you should be able to identify quickly here, as it can prove valuable in a number of different contexts. One of the other things that I typically ask of my students is to be able to make connections across time. Well, on each chapter, there is a particular page, and the heading looks just like this, from then to now. And what it does is it makes those connections across time and creates some of those. Those can be tremendously helpful for you, either in the form of a group presentation, a class debate, or a particular essay. Maps can prove tremendously helpful, too, in our understanding of history. We need to remember that maps don't just show us where things are. They can also tell us what things are in different locations, what sort of resources different areas have, what different people live in different areas, and the amount of immigrants that are coming from one country to another, or the flow of goods from one country to another. So it's important to know where these maps are located in our book. Here, we see not only maps, but graphs as well. And what's helpful about this beginning part of the book is that in addition to presenting us this information, it's telling us how to analyze this information. These things are going to be located in nearly every chapter in this book, and it's helpful for us to understand how to break those down. I do want to note that many of your AP US history questions, especially those with the College Board, will utilize graphs and maps in their questions as well. So understanding them is critical. Maps and graphs aren't the only visuals, though. Pie charts, bar graphs are going to be utilized as well. And being able to look at those quickly is helpful. And what's nice about those particular ones, or these infographics, is that there are things that you can compile massive amounts of text in a visual component and be able to digest that very quickly. Yet, sadly, these are things that too many times students end up skipping over. A good place to look at this sort of information is as you're pre-reading the chapter and later on as you're going over that core context. Overviews are another thing that students will sometimes skip in their chapters. Again, this covers a pretty massive amount of material and in a neat, clear fashion. By the way, this is also how we're going to approach some of our pre-writing later this year. And by the way, many times this year you might be asked to put certain events in order. Well, about the third page of every chapter, you have a chronology section. And there you will learn many of the key events during the specific period that occurred during the chapter you're reading. And those were just the sources at the beginning of the book. Now let's take a look at the back of the book, starting with your appendix. Here we see the Declaration of Independence. Aside from that, though, we have the Articles of Confederation, as well as the Constitution. Now, guys, understanding these key texts is an integral part, an absolutely crucial part about understanding the first 2-3 units. And the reason for that is we're going to continue to come back to questions related to that. I might ask you, what about Article 1 stresses the importance of the legislative branch? Or what branch was intended to be the weakest? These will be tremendously useful tools in answering those questions. In the back, you'll also find the presidential elections. If I'm simply asking you, well, who was president during 1864 or 1884? Well, it's helpful to kind of be able to flip to the back of your book and quickly find who that might be. In case you need a little extra reference, you might even want to know who the Secretary of Treasury was or who the Secretary of War was under any given president. The justices are also listed in the back. I'm not going to require you to memorize each of these. That's a key thing that I want you to know, or the administrations of the previous presidents. But it can be helpful to know who some of the key justices are. For instance, we are going to be taking an especially close look at John Marshall here, who is in the first part of this area here. He was the first Chief Justice. Earl Warren's another one that we're going to be taking a look at, as well as Justice Taney. It's important to note when they served so we can get a feel for the sorts of decisions that were made. Take a look at this resource in the back of your book. Here we can see the admission of the states into the Union of the different 50 states. You might be surprised how late some of these states have been admitted, or to see ultimately when states split off from other states. The statistics at the back of the book I find absolutely fascinating as well, just understanding where our population started in the late 1700s all the way to present day, well, present day meaning 2000. But we even see the types of work that they're involved in, as well as the number of births, deaths, divorces here as well. The racial composition of the population is indicated here as well. We might overgeneralize and say, well, isn't it all about just a bunch of dead white guys? Well, there are a few different people at play here. There were a few Indians around at the time and some Hispanics as well. Asians quickly followed them, and, well, blacks have been around about as long as whites have. So it's important to kind of look at what their numbers are. The economy and federal spending is another one. You know, you've heard claims by some conservatives arguing that President Obama is spending more than any other president prior to him. Well, take a look here and see whether or not that's accurate. And finally, we can take a look at interesting graphs like this that indicate the immigration to the United States since 1820 by decade. The categories here are fairly broad with Europe, Asia, the Americas in general, like South America and Africa and Oceania, but we still do get a general sense of the trends over time, which can be tremendously helpful. I hope this video proved helpful to you in getting the most out of your AP US History textbook this year, and, well, happy reading, everybody.